Hi, it's Kylie Koo. Welcome to my studio. So, I am returning to filming pages in my 52-week Accordion Concertina journal. I've got a whole playlist. Unfortunately, I don't have all the pages filmed, but my intention at the start of 2024 was to do a page each week in this journal, and hopefully by the end have 52 pages. Now, I was checking back, and the last page I actually published a video on was back in April, and that was page 16. Now, since then, I've done another 21 pages. I can't believe I've done more pages since I stopped filming it than before. Anyway, reasons for that: I broke my wrist and, I couldn't do any filming at all then, but I did continue to do little bits and pieces on pages. I also did at that point have some videos recorded of pages I'd done, but I hadn't edited them. And to be honest, it got to the point where I needed to clear some space on my disk and on my computer, and I just deleted it because I didn't think I was going to get back to it. But all I did during the weeks when I really couldn't create was I took one of my pages and I would put a few scraps of paper on it. And week before last, or was it last week, I'm losing track of time, I decided to get all the pages done and get them up to date. And I showed that on my Instagram, just the pages that I'd done. So I'm going to start today by doing a quick flip through of the pages since page 16 back in April. So 21 pages, I reckon. So I've now got 37 in all, plus I've got my cover page. And then I'm going to go on and do page 38. So I'm sitting recording this on the Sunday of week 38. So I'm going to do this, and then probably next week I'm going to try and bring it forward a little bit earlier, because I'd like to change it to doing it on the Wednesday rather than the weekend, and just try and get ahead of it. So I've got this in here just as a marker. So this was the last page. I'm going to bring it in just a little bit so hopefully you see it a bit more clearly. I'm not going to go through the detail of each page. It's really a flip through. You will see at times I've been using gesso, at other times I've been using a kind of texture paste, continued to use ink, etc. I've started to join them slightly differently. Before, I was doing this kind of join on both the front of the page and the back. I decided that sometimes I was losing a bit of the page that I didn't want to lose, so instead I've changed to just doing a bit on the back and a smaller piece. I don't know if it's going to hold up. If it's not, then I will actually come in and put a little bit of the fabric there to hold it. The other thing I've done is, previously I was doing a lot on the back of the page as well. I've actually simplified the process and I'm not doing quite so much on the back. So I'm just going to flip through these pages, probably just take hardly a minute, but that was the last one, which, interestingly, I put words down to say you have been witness to such and such things. So let's flip through the rest, and then I will start this week's page, page 38. Okay, so for those of you who were following along and doing pages at the same time, I'm really sorry that I just couldn't keep it up. It was just impossible when my wrist was broken. You know, I ended up, once I was able to do things, I was then gluing them back down into place, but I tried to simplify the process as much as possible, so there was nothing fancy on the page. Now, if you've not seen any of these videos before, I'm basically using old cardstock. I realised that the ones I pulled out recently, this is a single page, the ones I've pulled out more recently are much more flimsy, so I'm starting by gluing two together, and then I'm going to add some more papers to them just as kind of base layers. I have actually made up a few in advance, just sticking the two sheets together. I was fortunate that when I'd broken my wrist, I'd already made a lot of the bases up in advance, but the two together are barely the thickness of one of these, so I'm just reinforcing them with other pages, such as these, just old book pages, textbook pages, dictionary pages, and taking it from there. The other thing, a lot of the time I was using a medium, gel matte medium or matte medium, and I'm now basically using a glue stick. So I did treat myself to some of the art glitter glue. I should have looked more clearly at the size. It's expensive for the amount you get, so, but I'm only doing that to kind of stick down edges. So, right, let's get started on today's. So I'll basically start by gluing these together. Not a complicated process at all. I'll glue these together. I'll then strengthen them by probably just putting one of these pages on each. And then I will start to use some collage pieces. I'll probably just put some music over this because there's not really much more to say than that, but I'll come in as and when I'm going to do something different. I love to have pieces of paper, drop paper, sold packaging underneath just to catch any paint or glue, ink, whatever. Bits of deli paper that you can see I've used over and over, and again it's just for the kind of gluing process. Right, here goes.
Hey, you couldn't see it coming. You might have thought it, but you couldn't change it. Hey, it's not right or wrong. It's about trying, find the silver lining, rain and fire, highs and lows, you name it, cold and warm,
So I'm kind of feeling like that's all the collage I want on this. This will become the back. I'm not going to do any more to that. It will pick up some ink, but you know, that's fine. This side I'm going to either use some gesso or some texture paste, perhaps a texture paste. I like the texture on this piece, which is one of my distressed collage pieces. I'll put a video link to my distressed collage process, and I'm going to be doing some more of this soon because I'm kind of running out of this sort of stuff. So yeah, all I'm going to do now, I'm going to put some of these pages underneath just to collect any ink and whatnot when I get to that stage. These pages are a bit stark. It is quite an old book, but the pages have remained relatively white, so just like to lay these out, and once they get a bit of ink or whatever on them, that will look even better. Right, I've got a lot there, but that's fine. Okay, so I think texture paste. So I'm actually going to use this Ranger texture paste, and it gives a bit of a crackle effect. It's not huge cracks, but there we go. This stuff is a bit crumbly. I'm going to put it through a stencil. I might well do. This is a stencil I bought, gosh, at the start of the year. I've been using this kind of throughout this, sometimes with gold paint, sometimes with gesso or whatever. So I'm just going to use a bit of this. I like this. Although I did put it away and it kind of got folded a bit, but it's okay, it's fine. Right, I'm going to put some of this on, then I'll put the heat tool on it to try and dry it a bit quicker. Don't want too much, maybe just a couple of bits here and there. Right. So you might be able to see the cracks are very fine at the moment. That's a better one. I'm going to have to lay it down because my hand was getting a little bit hot with the heat tool. But you can see just a tiny bits of crack showing. There we go, that one's... If it goes on too thin, a lot of this then just comes off again, but you know, I don't mind that. I do also like the fact I get the kind of dendritic effects just the way it goes on. So I'm going to finish drying this. Don't know if many more cracks will show, but we'll do that and then I'll let you see it before I put the ink on it. So I think I'm going to use 2 inks this week. I don't know, when I come to use ink, I really just go with what I'm feeling. Do I look at the colours? Maybe subconsciously I do, but it's more just with how I'm kind of feeling. So I've picked out the Daler Rowney FW in Indigo, one of my favourite inks. And I've also picked out the Daler Rowney System 3, and this is Cadmium Orange Hue. In paint terms, Cadmium Orange Hue is one of my favourite colours to work with. I like this ink, it's very bright and it is quite opaque, so it's one of those which for me is kind of more is less. Albeit I did use it in I think a few pages over the weeks. Sometimes when it gets blended in, can't really see it all that much, but yeah, I think that one was a mix of the Cad Orange Hue and also a red of some description. So yeah, I like that. I'm going to try this first. I will scoosh it with some water, although I've been using slightly less so it doesn't go quite as far, just really to get a different effect. And I love just to let it kind of play about, move through things. The texture paste will take on some of the colour, but it will also act as a kind of resist. Now I might just give this a little dry before I add the Cad Orange. So it's not fully dry. You'll see that my distressed collage here, I mean this is just very thin magazine paper. It's where I've distressed it, it's taken on some of the colour. You can see some of the colour within the texture. Great dendritic effects. It's like a little bird. So I'm going to come in with some of the orange now. I'm just letting that go onto the back, it doesn't matter how it goes on. Just going to give this a little bit of colour up here, I think. Not too much, maybe a little here. Sometimes just use a paintbrush just to move it a little bit. If I want white bits filled in, I can just take it over like that. Still seeing, although it's opaque because I've watered it down a little, I'm still able to get some of the effect underneath the card. Quite like this blobby bit. It just takes up any excess. unintended, but I like the way that line now sits there. So I'm going to dry this. It might move a little. If it's still damp, it will move a little, but again, that can be part of the fun, just seeing how it does move. So I'm just going to finish the card off by doing some little bits of gold paint on it. This tube burst up the side, and all I've done is to put a bit of plastic wrap around it, and yeah, I'm still getting enough out it to keep using, and it saves it being wasted or having to decant it into something else. I'm just taking a tiny amount. I'll just put it on in a couple of places, and then I will edge it. That's something that's been kind of constant through this process. So just kind of looking to see where I think it might go. Just on top of some of that texture paste. I'm not using it as a kind of, it doesn't quite sit on, it tends to go in between rather than on top, depending on how it's applied. I think it just starts to highlight some of the pattern. Turning a nice kind of green gold in there where I'm just putting it on very thin, and you can still see the kind of green paper underneath. Yeah, quite like that effect. As if it's almost dripping down. Strange way to get paint out of a tube, I know, but I'm not going to waste it. I think some of that on top of the orange will look good. And indeed some on top of the indigo. Oops. You know, I don't think it needs much more than that. I'm now just going to go around the edge. I'll show you briefly how I do that. Either use a finger or my thumb, not my thumb, a finger or a sponge. Just think this gives it a nice edge. Oops, there's a lot popped out. So again, if you're here for the first time watching this, these cards are, is it 5x4? Making them all the same size. I don't mind if down the edges is rough. In fact, I prefer that to it being a totally straight edge, and doing this, it sometimes just highlights where there's the little bits sticking out a little. Hard to see there. Right, you get the idea, so I'll just go around the rest of it and then I will come on to finish off the video. So that's basically it. It's still wet around the edges, so I'm just being cautious. I like that I've still got my little bird in here, albeit it's taken on a kind of gold colour now. It's a very simple process, this. I guess you could say it's kind of intuitive because I don't set off with anything in mind. I just use scraps. The scraps change because I use the ink on top of it. So never quite sure what I'm going to get. Obviously using the texture paste through the stencil brings a slightly different look to it. I don't always use the stencil in that way, but still elements of the scrap papers and the white showing through a bit. I think when you look at these, the detail of them, there's so much in the detail, you know, a nice effect looking at it overall, but when you look at the detail, there's just some interesting things. And leaving the back plainer now than I did previously. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed that. That's week 38. This will probably go up Tuesday or Wednesday. You might be seeing this, or of course you could be looking at it at a later date. So this is for the previous weekend's video, week 38, but I'm going to actually start on week 39 fairly soon because I'd like to move it to putting these up maybe midweek rather than on the Saturday, but we'll see. So I might actually start next week's card today. I've got something different planned for that, trying to get back to maybe more of the prompts rather than just kind of plain cards. Just picked up some of the gold, not to worry. Okay, thanks ever so much for watching. Do take care. Bye for now.